Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.Buzz, and I'm really excited today to welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast, all the way from Cardiff or around Cardiff in the UK, Karl Swanepoel, who's an award-winning entrepreneur. He's the founder of Revolancer and an influential figure in the freelancing industry. Welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast, Karl. It's a real privilege to have you here as my guest.
Thanks very much for having me.
Now, Revolancer is a platform that aims to help independent professionals and freelancers barter their skills and build their skills as well and build their service businesses. So we'll get you to tell us a little bit about that in a moment. And you also point out, I think, in some of the work I've seen or some of your publications, that the freelancing industry is kind of operating on a bit of a dated model, and your mission is to bring that up
Yeah.
to the current state of the art. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that some more today. Before we get into those topics, though, what's the impact you're personally making today, Karl?
Well, I think that's hard to say, but I mean the impact that I'm aiming to make is to permanently improve the freelancing industry for the better, to bring it into the 21st century, which unfortunately a lot of it is still, in my opinion, not quite in the 21st century. I think the industry as a whole has had a serious lack of innovation for a very long time, and it's my ambition to change that for the better.
Okay, well, so when you say the freelancing industry has had a lack of innovation for a long time, give us some specifics around that.
Absolutely. So there are a few sort of large existing, incumbents in terms of freelancing platforms out there. And the first one is actually, I don't know if they were quite the first, but they're probably the kind of longest established large platform. Is actually an Australian company called Freelancer.com. And they've been around since, I think, the very early 2000s. More than 20 years at this point. And then, a few years later in 2007, 2009, other platforms started popping up as well, like People Power and Fiverr and Upwork, although they were, that was created out of a merger. But, the companies that created Upwork were also founded around that kind of time. And in all of the time since, these companies haven't really changed anything about how they operate. And the way they operate, I believe, is not really compatible with the way that we like to work remotely these days. And kind of the primary reason why is because of how they monetize. So these platforms, they take a commission fee on transactions. And that commission fee can be quite large. So, in the case of Fiverr, they charge the freelancer 20% and the client 5%. And that in and of itself is a problem. But the bigger problem that's caused by that is that in order to make sure, that you can collect your fee as the platform, you have to really police how people can communicate. So that means no video calling. It means no emailing, no talking on the phone, no exchanging WhatsApp or Slack or anything else, right? So essentially you're forced to kind of send, instant messages back and forth through that portal. The freelancers getting, a much smaller amount of the money that you're actually paying for the service. So I wonder how they expect that, you can communicate properly with the freelancer and really get, what you're paying for. So that's been the reality for very long, and that's what we're looking to change.
Yeah, well, one of the things I hear from a lot of people who've used services like that is, very mixed reviews in terms of the outcomes that they get from working with the freelancers. And I wonder how much of that is actually due to what you've just raised there, that convoluted communication channel where, okay, let's say I want a certain, let's say I want a web page and I want it to look a certain way and I want it to have certain copy on there. Well, if I'm going through this convoluted channel of communication, there's so many ways that me expressing what I want ends up arriving at the freelancer's desk as something completely different. and then I complain because I'm not getting what I want.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it certainly plays a part. And then the other part is, you're paying $105 and the freelancer gets 80. So, what level of service do you expect? Do you expect the freelancer to compromise? Are you going to compromise on your expectations? And that scales as well for Fiverr, especially. That fee is the same, even if you're paying, $10,000, then you're paying 10,500 and the freelancer gets 8,000. So, I mean, there is a discrepancy there. And ultimately the question is, well, somebody has to compromise. But who's it going to be?
Yeah. And so Revolancer is your platform. So tell us a little bit about that and how that is different to these services, what you're doing to change this, to bring the freelancing business into the 21st century.
Well, it's really quite simple, but the problem is that it just hasn't been done before. Which is essentially that we solve those two problems that I mentioned by first of all not charging a commission fee. We don't monetize in that way. So, the freelancer gets all of the money that you pay. And then because we don't charge a commission fee, we have absolutely no reason to restrict communication. So, you can video call, you can connect off platform. That's not a problem at all. And I think it's in fact quite an important part of, modern day kind of remote online working. And then beyond that, what we also do is we really aim to sort of encourage and empower new freelancers to start their journeys, which a lot of these large platforms fail to do. So we do that through skills and service exchanges. We do that through publishing resources, working with influencers in the freelancing space, and just having like more of a community on our platform where you can kind of follow, other people's work and look at their portfolios and case studies and be inspired. And also, can connect with them, connect with other freelancers. And the freelancing industry really thrives on collaboration. But, unfortunately, your options are so limited. So, what people have been doing for a long time is when they want to connect with and network with other freelancers, they'll use a Facebook group, for example. But that's then completely separate from where they publish their work, which is completely separate from where they connect with clients. And it just becomes this convoluted mess. So we kind of put that all into one place and solve those basic problems.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of value add there. And I see another benefit there for freelancers and for businesses using the service. And that's, let's say going back to that website example, let's say I want the website, but I want some fancy copy written, or I want an email marketing campaign to be at the back end of a landing page. Well, I might have a freelancer who's a web design specialist, and he will tell me, well, I'm sorry, I'm not really good at writing copy or doing an email marketing campaign. And in the old model, that would probably then require me to go and find somebody else to do that part of the work. Whereas in this model, there's the potential but I'm in this community and I know a guy who's good at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, freelancers just like entrepreneurs. I mean, I think that the two groups have a lot in common. It's kind of a lonely road. You're working for yourself. You're your own boss, but it's you are working by yourself ultimately. So freelancers typically really want to network and collaborate with each other. So that's something that we think is great and do a lot to encourage.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you don't charge a commission. So how do you monetize the service then?
So at the moment we aren't, but when we do, it's going to be in two parts. First of all, we're going to have an optional paid subscription plan for freelancers where they can access sort of premium features. But there's always going to be the ability to get started and use Revolancer for free. And then on the other side, we are going to be working with large recruitment companies, jobs boards that have more and more freelancing opportunities, and sort of, charging them to post those opportunities to our large network of freelancers. So, a large part of the monetization will be completely, kind of behind the scenes for what the freelancers are concerned.
Yeah. And in terms of platform costs and so on, how are you covering that?
So we are VC backed. We have a bunch of really good investors, and we're essentially looking to gain as much market share as possible in a short period of time, and basically become the new kind of go-to large platform.
All right. So how long has Revolancer been going? It sounds like it's still in the very early days, even though you've got a pretty clear vision.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the platform itself has been live for about 2 years now, and then I came up with the idea probably about two and a half years ago or so now, and have been working on it ever since.
And how many freelancers would be on there, and how many users of the services, the freelance services?
Yeah, so I mean, in total, we've got, I believe, nearly 130,000 users or so now. So we've been growing very fast. Just a few months ago, I want to say back in May, we had 20,000 users. And it took like one and a half years or so to build it to that point, and then we've been growing very, very fast now. And that is in large part due to our whole product roadmap really being built on freelancer feedback. We call with users all the time and take what they say, their feedback very much into account. So what that means is we're building the platform people really want, and then they'll use it happily and tell other people about it. So yeah, I think that's the key.
That's very rapid growth. So have you grown your team to kind of keep pace with that growth in usership?
Yeah, we have. We've scaled the team up a fair bit recently, and we're hiring for more roles at the moment as well. So we're in exciting times, and we're raising our seed round at the moment, which is going really well. And yeah, I'm just very excited for what's next.
Sounds exciting. So what are some of the challenges you've faced over the journey from just over 2 years ago to where you are now, and particularly with that rapid growth spurt in the last 6 or so months?
Well, I mean, I've faced a lot of challenges. I think, taking on, very sort of long established industry with many big players that have, public companies with valuations in billions. It's certainly not supposed to be easy, but I think that's certainly a part of why it's really worth doing. So yeah, I mean, some sort of key challenges early on was just getting the growth started. So it took us about 6 months to get from 0 to 1,000 users from launch. And now we easily see multiple thousand signups every single day. So that's been an incredible change, but it took a while. It took a while to kind of build up to that, and to where it's kind of started snowballing now. We also used to have a different name, and then we got a legal challenge on our trademark. This was before we raised funding, so that was something I had to basically deal with myself, which was very tricky, but we managed to navigate that absolutely fine, and kind of get out of that, and sort of change the name, and I think it's a much better name now. But then, yeah, I mean, more recently, like with the growth, certainly challenges come from that too, which is, even though we only have a small percentage of users kind of having issues on the platform and needing to chat to support, if the user base suddenly scales very quickly, even if it's a small percentage, that's going to rise a lot. So making sure that we have, a really good knowledge base, and making sure that we can sort of have a good system where, a smaller percentage of users actually need to speak to support, and perhaps when they open a ticket, we can recommend a support article that solves that problem. But then also making sure that we have enough sort of staff to to handle that. So there are lots of challenges all the time, but it's what makes it worth doing.
Yeah. I was thinking about, I mean, the timing, your timing sort of coincided with the early days of the COVID pandemic, right? And did that kind of derail things, or was it a case of because people were locked down and looking to find contact and basically fleeing online to connect with other people, did that help you in some way?
I mean, I think it absolutely did. So when I kind of initially came up with the idea, we were in a lockdown at the time in the UK, and I was looking at these freelancing platforms that I had personally used as a freelancer many years before. And that's when I realized that, even though now video calling is such an essential part of remote work, they still haven't changed their policies. And, they still haven't today. And I don't think they're going to. They're not really in a good position to at this point. So yeah, and I mean, the other thing is with the pandemic, I think lots of people kind of had a bit of that shock where they, maybe felt that they've become a bit complacent and that really, things couldn't change massively overnight. So then more and more people kind of thought, well, there's maybe more risk just out there than they perhaps thought there was. And then would pursue starting a business or going into freelancing and chasing like a dream that they've had for a while. So I mean, even today, a third of the global workforce are freelancers, but that number is rising rapidly and quite it surprised me the first time I saw this, but in hindsight it makes a lot of sense, which is that 71% of Gen Z either already do or want to go into freelancing as a alternative to traditional employment. So I think the pandemic just accelerated that essentially.
Yeah, and of course it kind of opened up many people's eyes to the possibility that I can work with anyone anywhere in the world. And
yeah, certainly.
With the podcast, obviously, I can talk to anybody anywhere in the world. So why can't I do some work for somebody anywhere in the world?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I guess I'm curious about, it seems to me that these older platforms, their policy on communication is such that they kind of control things, and there's this fear that, let's say, you're a freelancer on a freelancing platform and I'm a customer on that freelancing platform, you're doing some work for me. At some stage, it could occur to me as the customer of the platform that I might be better off working with you directly, and I'll pay you 100%. You receive 100%. You're really happy because you actually get 25% more than when you're on the platform. I'm happy because I'm paying 10% less. We both win, but the platform loses. And I'm assuming that that's what they're afraid of. Is that how you see it, and how do you see, like, what is it in your platform that prevents the customer, so the person for whom the freelancer is working, and the freelancer who is on your platform, how do you prevent them from saying, well, we don't need the platform?
Well, I mean, if a freelancer is just looking to find one client and then not use the platform again, then I don't think there's necessarily anything we can do. I certainly don't think that in that case, trying to stop that and sort of forcibly interrupt that is a sensible strategy. But the thing is that freelancers, usually the behavior of freelancers that they'll want to keep connecting with more clients, because if they're just working with one client, they're sort of contracting for them. It's not that sort of dissimilar from, like a kind
having
of a full-time job. Yeah. So that's essentially how. So we don't stop that, but essentially we are a platform for freelancers to connect with one another and to connect with more clients.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a directory to find more clients, a way to connect with other freelancers, a way to access more knowledge, because you talked about the education piece early on. Is there
absolutely.
an education piece for clients, for the users of the freelancers? Because it occurs to me there's a huge opportunity there. I mean, a lot of those would be small business owners that maybe are outsourcing some part of their work for the first time and could probably use a lot of help in communication, in how to actually manage people remotely, perhaps. So a lot of other things. Is there an opportunity there, or are you already doing that?
There absolutely is an opportunity there, and we have the Revolancer magazine where we publish articles for freelancers, but also for small business owners. So yeah, we put a lot of content out there, for both freelancers and small business owners.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's more than just the freelancing agency and the traditional model. It's a networking platform, an educational platform for both parties to that freelancer business owner dynamic, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our goal.
And one of the things that I know your background's in artificial intelligence, your education is in artificial intelligence. And one of the things that I think is a huge potential right now, hugely exciting, is this whole area of interactive or large language models, the ChatGPT type things. And how do you see that playing into the work of freelancers and how they can maybe expand their capacity to do work or expand their skill set to take on more work?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I think there's a lot of narrative, or at least there has been a lot of narrative in the media surrounding things like ChatGPT, essentially implying that it's going to replace people, or that it's already replacing people. Which I mean, you just have to look at some of the stories with ChatGPT and sort of lawyers using it to prepare their defense and how horribly that went wrong. To realize that isn't necessarily how it's going to pan out, at least on in the short term. I think absolutely, like you pointed out, it's a tool for freelancers to improve efficiency and maybe even the breadth of services that they can offer. And I think a lot of smart freelancers are using tools like ChatGPT that way. I mean, I'm using ChatGPT a lot in my work. But I'm also conscious of the fact that ChatGPT isn't, kind of a sentient sort of, artificial human or something. And that ultimately, you need to give it a very good prompt, but also you need to know your stuff and check it over, because I think that is where people make mistakes.
Yeah, I did something simple the other day. I was too lazy to copy. ChatGPT now can take images and you can ask it a question based on the image. And I was too lazy to copy out a table from a PDF page and sum the numbers in one of the columns of that table, which is what I wanted to do. So I thought, hang on, I'll try this. I did a screenshot of the PDF of the table. I uploaded that screenshot into ChatGPT and I said, can you please give me the average of column B? And it came back with a number. And I looked at the number and I thought, that can't be right, without having checked it myself, because there were about 30 numbers. But the average, it was just far too low. It can't be right. So I went back and I said, can you check that for me again? That seems wrong. And I didn't actually calculate it. But it's interesting because the first answer it gave me, it just gave me the direct answer. The second time, it then went through the logic. So it actually wrote out every number and it did A plus B plus C plus D, and then there's counted the numbers and divided by that and worked out the average. And because it had written it out then step by step, I could just copy that and paste it into Google and get the calculator to work it out as well, which I did, and that was correct. But it highlighted pretty clearly that you can't, it's not what you get back isn't necessarily fact.
No, absolutely. I mean, I at one point I got ChatGPT to prove that. I also to prove that I think zero. Yeah, I also to prove that 0.9 recurring is equal to 1, and then it kind of gave a step by step, and it was just absolute nonsense. I think one of the steps was, and therefore 0.9 is equal to 1, and therefore 0.9 recurring is equal to 1, or something to that nature. Okay, yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think ChatGPT, it's very good for kind of creative copywriting kind of tasks. So, if, like, let's say if you want to write a letter or an email or something, and you kind of give it some rough notes and bullet points, then it can create some really good work. Definitely also needs to be checked. But with anything like playing chess or doing calculations or so on, it'll give you a very confident answer, but quite often it's nonsense.
Yeah, I've found some really way out of the box applications though that are quite amazing. One of the things I'm playing with right now, I use Excel extensively, but I don't understand any Excel functions. They're just way beyond me. I never really have gotten into that. I've never learned it, and I'm not interested really. But recently I've been putting together some complex Excel spreadsheets simply as tracking tools. And I thought, I wonder if I can automate this step, which is basically determining if there's a date in the second column and then giving me the difference between the dates, but also then calculating a return on how much money is invested and how long that was invested. So there's actually quite a complex formula, and I can't even work out the formula myself. I couldn't even do it on paper because it's a pretty complex formula. So I've gone in and asked ChatGPT, give me the formula for this, and I give it the structure of the original spreadsheet, which I inherited from somebody. So that's makes it even more complex because you're working with one that you haven't built yourself. And it actually is quite amazing what comes back. But what it forces you to do is be really, really clear on what you're wanting to do. And the more you can break that down and articulate it, and I've even gotten to the point where it's come back and we've gone around in circles, because if I get an error or something, or if it's wrong, I'll go back and say there's an error, here's the error message, and it'll try to correct it. Or I'll go back and I'll say, well, the answer's wrong. It should be this and it's that. And then it'll try to correct that as well. And once we went around in circles for ages, and ultimately I got the right answer from it, but it took a long time. And what it was I kept having to hang on. I haven't specified this bit, or I haven't specified that bit. And in the end, I just typed in, thanks for that. I'm sorry, I wasn't real clear. I have trouble articulating every bit of the process and what needs to happen. So it's actually really good to get you to do that, to articulate something fairly complex.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the more information you give it, the better the results. I mean, I've used ChatGPT before to kind of write large reports, and then I'll give it a, maybe not 5, but maybe like 300 word prompt for it to write 2,000 words or something like that. And then, I don't need to correct anything. So I think that, the more information you can give it up front, the better the chances are that you get a good result.
Yeah. So what do you see as some of the opportunities for freelancers with ChatGPT? Because clearly, coming back to what you said earlier, there's this myth that's around that artificial intelligence is going to replace people. I keep saying, no, people who understand artificial intelligence are going to replace people who don't.
Yeah, I
And
think that's certainly a lot
yeah,
more a lot more how it's going to work out. I mean, yeah, ultimately, it's I think that it can help you automate parts of your workflow. Perhaps if English isn't your first language and you want to get into copywriting, it can help you produce higher quality work faster. Um, so I think like ultimately it's a tool, it's a tool,
mm,
and essentially how well that tool works for you is in part down to how well you use the tool, how well you
yeah,
understand it, and so on. But yeah, I mean, I think overall it's a really good thing for freelancers, and I don't see it as a threat to freelancers, at least not within the next considerable time frame.
mm. All right, excellent. Before we move on to the buzz, our innovation round, do you have any kind of words of wisdom, any advice to people who are looking to start out as freelancers, who sort of have always been interested in this, looking to start, and maybe are not quite sure what to pay attention to and what traps to avoid that might be lurking out there?
I mean, for me, what's always been the most important thing is to just get started. So I think if someone's been thinking about it for a while, the best first step is to start and kind of figure it out, along the way. And I think a good way of, starting to figure it out is to go on LinkedIn or somewhere and reach out to established freelancers, or go into Revolancer and reach out to established freelancers and just ask questions and, see what you can learn and kind of ask them how did they get started,
Mm,
and kind of go from there. But I think the key thing is to just start, and kind of accept that you're not going to have all of the answers up front, but you're also not going to get all of the answers by just sort of waiting for longer,
yeah, yeah.
essentially. So yeah, I'd say that's really the most important thing to do.
Yeah, excellent. So take advantage of those resources that are there and ask other people. And particularly, it sounds like the culture at Revolancer is very much that established freelancers are keen to help others and help one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Excellent. All right. Well, let's move on to the buzz, our innovation round. It's the same 5 questions I ask of every guest. And the idea is you'll give us some answers that will inspire the listener to do something awesome today as a result.
Perfect. Sounds
All
good.
set?
Yeah.
All right. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
I think well, it's got to be thinking outside the box and kind of this concept of first principle thinking, and and then that's kind of looking at a problem and essentially trying to disregard established knowledge on that, be it
Hmm.
your own experiences, so thinking oh, this isn't going to work because I tried it before and it didn't work,
Yeah.
or be it sort of common knowledge that you kind of got from elsewhere.
Hmm. Yeah. I think one of the questions I like to ask in those kind of situation is why not? And
Yeah,
I know one of my guests said, why not me and why not now?
absolutely.
It's a good place to generate that innovation. All right. Now, what's the best way you've done? What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
I mean, I think a big part of it is listening to other people. So, well, thinking of new ideas, kind of constantly, and brainstorming, pushing them all, but also listening to other people. So, listening to feedback from users on the platform, to
Hmm.
suggestions from other people on the team, to our advisors, that kind of thing. I mean, I treat. I don't think that an idea kind of has more value depending on who came up with it. I think it needs to be tested, and yeah, I think that's very important.
Hmm. Yeah, and certainly with something like the Revolancer platforms, the users that use it day in, day out, they're the ones that are probably going to have the best insights into what might be a
Yeah.
good value add and what's not working as well as perhaps it could be.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. All right. What's a favorite resource of yours that you use most often?
I'd say YouTube is a big one. I mean, you can find so many
Yeah.
great, free tutorials, talks, and all sorts of things on there. So I mean, I kind of grew up on the internet and with YouTube. So I really encourage everyone to use that resource.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of YouTube. I've going back pretty much since the start of my business, I sort of discovered that, gee, there's some really interesting stuff on YouTube. It's a little bit like ChatGPT, though, isn't it? There's rubbish on there as well.
Yeah.
So you do have to apply a filter there, but there are some amazing educational videos there in all kinds of different areas. And recently, I've been looking at repairing some stuff around the home, and I forgot that I'm always using YouTube, and I said, hang on, I'll go on YouTube, and you can read about here's a step-by-step guide how to do this, but it makes a lot more sense if you've got somebody showing you.
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. Yeah, I think it's been, well, a fantastic thing for the world, and I mean, yeah, I completely agree with the comparison to ChatGPT. It's a very useful tool, but it ultimately comes down to how you use it in terms of how effective it would be.
And of course, as you say, there's lots of fabulous talks on there, like TED Talks. You can find all kinds of TED Talks on YouTube as well. And you can find the Innova.Buzz podcast on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. What's the best way to keep a client on track?
I think just clear and open communication. So, really kind of laying out, maybe based on milestones, the work that's agreed on. I think that's the most important thing. I think, a mistake many freelancers make, and I certainly did at the beginning, is just sort of, agreeing to a project saying, oh, I'll build you a website. And then the client starts saying, oh, and now I want these 5 extra pages, or now I want this, and now I want this. So just being very, very clear in your communication from the front, and, having a firm agreement in place. Yeah.
And there's, I'm wondering, do you have resources, templates for that kind of thing to get those agreements in place, or to do a clear project brief where everybody knows, okay, this is what's expected, this is what should be delivered?
Yes, we do have sort of resources and templates available on the Revolancer magazine, but also in the way that our platform is built. It kind of encourages, it sort of has certain prompts and encourages people to be very clear, about what's involved with the project.
Yeah, great. All right. Finally, in the buzz round, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I mean, I think this is again where this idea of first principle thinking comes in, which is such a great way of thinking for entrepreneurs or freelancers or anyone really. And another thing that I heard that I completely agree with is oftentimes where innovation really happens is when you have an intersection of 2 fields that don't necessarily intersect. So, well, one example is, for example, the Brexit referendum in the UK. So there, the one of the key ways that Brexit kind of won is because the Leave campaign combined, political theory with kind of, advanced sort of online marketing and targeting and so on. So that's just an example, but I think just in general, if you can find some kind of intersection between 2 fields that well that don't normally intersect, then there's a lot of innovation to be done there.
Yeah, that's a really great tip, and I know one of the classic ones that I always went back to in my days when I was doing chemistry was looking at how do plants do things in nature, and because I was working in the area of surface coatings for various applications. So it might have been a paint for a building surface, or it might have been a surface coating for a fabric. And one of the things that you want a surface coating, well, usually they're there for protection, for decoration, and the protection part is keep them clean, keep them looking fresh. And then you think of leaves that are out in the dust or in the rain, and you think, well, they naturally keep themselves clean. What do? So we actually had one where we used technology that was in a lotus leaf that has a natural surface coating on it that beads water, and use that, mimic that in the paint, which is sort of pretty innovative. It was at the time. I don't know if that's still around, that technology. I guess it probably is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, I think that's a very good example of, kind of thinking outside the box, and applying sort of lessons from nature. If you kind of see it working well there, that's probably evolved over millions of years. So got a nice head start there.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for getting us through the buzz round, Karl. Now, where can people find out more about you, about Revolancer, and maybe even get in touch and say thanks for what you've shared today?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you search my name on Google, you'll find my website and LinkedIn profile. So then connect with me there. And then if you go to Revolancer.com or just search that on Google as well, you can get started with freelancing.
Excellent. Well, we'll have those links in the show notes, of course. Now, what action would you like our listeners to take out of our conversation today, Karl?
I think the key thing is to, the best way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing, like Walt Disney said. Ultimately, I think it's, really good that people are listening to your podcast, and hopefully what I've shared has been useful here today. But I think the key thing that I want people to remember is that, no matter if those things might be true, ultimately actions speak louder than words. And the best thing to do is to just start, even if you don't have all the answers up front, because, that's how you start getting the answers. Yeah. So, if you have an idea, get started and talk to people, reach out to people to see if you can get answers for the questions that you might have. Great tip. Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today. It's been a fascinating discussion. We've covered lots of topics ranging from freelancing all the way to artificial intelligence and back again. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the listeners will take a lot away. So thanks again, Karl, and all the best for the future. Yeah, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed being on your podcast. Hope it's been helpful.